Yeah, I'm going to come back.
Down there.
Okay.
So it's showing you messages that are left. Chad is the only one in the call now. When another one comes in, I start talking this fella.
Mm-hmm.
But see, and they got a message from me saying that you and I are having this call. And I think they had your trailer on the end, I guess. Is that what they did? Because I got to say who's paying for it, right? Mm-hmm. This is Senator Rodney Ellis. I know we got a few people in the call, and if you've participated in these calls before, you know the technology is such that it may take about 10 minutes before we complete calling the households that we are going to call. So if you think I'm a little redundant, I'm not senile. I'm just trying to keep the call going. And I have some great guests today. I guess I should start off by thanking you all for being kind enough to let us invade your Sunday afternoon. Tomorrow is the first day of early voting, so I thought it was appropriate and important to do this today. And I just can't stress enough how much I appreciate you letting us call you home. I asked my wife if I could connect our household, and she said, please don't. But I can assure you everybody in my household will vote. I have Claude Cummings, Jr., who is a leader with the Communications Workers of America. He is responsible for this call tonight, and I want to thank him for being here. We have Tiffany Ho with the Texas Organizing Project here as well, and we got a couple of my staffers here. In fact, while we're filling in this time, I'm going to let them just say a little something so you know who they are. We have Chad Dunn, who used to work for me a long time ago, Chad. Chad is on the phone. He's not here in person. I think we're going to have a special guest who's going to come by towards the end of the call as well. One of our Congress people, I'm told, may come by. But Chad Dunn was a staffer for me. How long ago, Chad? Was before you went to law school?
Yeah, I guess it was about 14 years ago.
Yeah, well, who's counting? I didn't know it that far back. But Chad was the lead lawyer representing the people of Texas in that voter identification lawsuit. And Chad, while you just knowing that we're going to do a little filler, I'm gonna start off with our host here and let Claude just say a few things. Just so you know, right now there's 640 people in this call. We've left about 4,100 messages. And at some point, over 1,081 people have been in the call for some point. But,
right.
Claude,
well, that's great. Well, good evening to all of you. My name is Claude Cummings. I'm the Vice President of the Communication Workers of America. I actually represent the state employees of the state of Texas, as well as the AT&T, Verizon, other smaller telephone companies, and airline workers, manufacturing workers, throughout the 5 states that I represent. I'm just so happy to be here this evening with Senator Rodney Ellis on this most important call to convince you to just get out the vote. I won't go too much further into my remarks right now, but as the senator has said, we just want to thank you for being on the call. And more than anything else, tomorrow is the first day of early voting. It's also my birthday. Now, I'll take any gifts for anybody who wants to send me anything, okay? But I'm telling people, like I told my church members this morning, the only thing I want them to do is vote.
What?
We're hoping that we'll have one of the largest first day of early voting turnouts in the history of the state of Texas. CWA has bought radio time on the majority of radio stations across the state, as well as we've spent quite a bit of money on the press just to emphasize the importance of voting in this campaign. So thank you, Senator, so much for being here, and your staff for helping to organize this call. And I think that you'll find it most interesting, the comparisons in the 2 candidates for governor, as well as the 2 candidates for lieutenant governor during this conference call.
Claude, I heard your radio spots this morning. I don't get to listen to radio all the time, and I heard some CWA spots the last couple of days. I was in Florida.
Okay.
And CWA is paying for ads out there. I like the tie-in to Ferguson.
Right.
By the way, because it is so important. And to think about in that little town, I was with some folks in St. Louis. Ferguson's about, 30,000 people?
About 30,000 people.
And it is predominantly African-American town.
75% of the city is African-American, but there are very few African-American elected officials, if any.
Like one
there.
black councilwoman.
I think one black councilwoman.
Yeah.
And so CWA is investing quite a bit of money into Ferguson and other groups that are there to just try to change not only just the electorate, but we also are trying to get businesses to move into that city.
Well, the point being, they don't vote.
They don't vote. They don't vote. And to get them registered and get them to vote.
Yeah.
And so once we do that, we think that we can make some changes in that situation there. And by the way, on November the 2nd, I think it is, I'm going to have the president of the Missouri NAACP here in Houston, and he's going to be visiting radio stations with me just to talk about the conditions in Ferguson and the reason why they're that way. And they're exactly what you said. It's that way because people are not registered and they're not voting.
And I'd like to tie in on your ads. You talk about how those judicial races are so important, the district attorney's race, in addition to what's at the top of the ticket. Also, we have Tiffany Hogue here from the Texas Organizing Project. Tiffany, you want to just tell them a little bit about who you are and what you all are doing before we start early voting tomorrow?
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you, Claude, for having me on this call, and Senator Ellis and all of your staff for helping put this together. The Texas Organizing Project is a grassroots organization that organizes in neighborhoods that are low to moderate income, really around the issues that impact them. So we've been fiercely involved in pushing for Medicaid expansion in the past 2 years, and we're going to again be pushing for that in the next legislative session, but also really educating our communities about the options through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And our philosophy or our theory of change in the state of Texas is that you have your issues and you organize around them, and then you back it up with getting out to vote. So there's over 3 million Texans who are registered to vote, African American and Latino Texans who are registered to vote who do not vote. If we get a fraction of those to vote this cycle, it would make the difference. So in Harris County, the Texas Organizing Project is talking to 150,000 voters to get out and vote, and the importance of voting early and voting, period.
Tiffany, I mentioned earlier before we started the call that I was out visiting my 93-year-old father earlier today, and when I left, my sister called me and said that the Texas Organizing Project top people were at the front door, and you were asking about my dad, who unfortunately will not vote this cycle because he has Alzheimer's. And, you know, I'm assuming, before we get to Chad, if they would look for any case of voter fraud, if my sister who's on this call listening were to vote for my dad, because the vote ID stuff doesn't apply to mail-in ballots. Right. So if she were to vote for him, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to try to prosecute me and my sister. But they also knocked on the door because a dear friend from law school, her mother is registered at my address as well, and she's also in a convalescent home now, so they won't vote. But the point is, the Texas Organizing Project out in deep Sunnyside. Yes. I mean, I live in the real Sunnyside.
Yes, sir.
Not South Union, not the new Sunnyside. I live by Grimes. My parents, I grew up by Grimes Elementary School, but you're out there working and do a great job.
Thank you.
Look, we are celebrating the 49th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, and these were important legislative battles that previous generations, many of whom are on this phone now, out of the 1,100 people that are on this call at this very moment, somebody's old enough to have paid a poll tax. My daddy did. And we know how far we've come, but just how far we still have to go. I was very proud that my former staffer, former intern, Chad Dunn, was a lead lawyer, Claude, on that case, and asked me to go testify in federal court. Here's what's interesting. The way the courts have diluted civil rights in this country, in order to win one of those cases, you got to not only show that the law was discriminatory, the vote ID bill was discriminatory. Any idiot could figure that out. We know who does not have a driver's license.
That's right.
You know, who might owe for a ticket. And doesn't. We know that has a disproportionate impact on people of color, on African Americans and Hispanics. But you got to prove that the people knew that it was going to have a discriminatory impact when they did it. So, Chad, you know, I had to walk a thin line because at the end of the day, regardless of who wins the election, I'm not on the ballot, so I'm going to be there. Right. And I got to fight for people that I represent. But I have to politely pretty much say that, you know, these are good people that I work with, but they did a bad thing. Right. You know, a polite way of pointing out. Imagine what it would be like, even during Dr. King's era, if you just had to call somebody racist insensitive to their face. It's a hard thing to do.
It's a hard thing
so
to do.
you have to use that
But
word
the truth of the matter is they are.
Oh, yeah, you got to say it. I mean, you got to point it out to win the case. Chad, tell us what has happened in court. Just give us a little background on this.
Well, the good news is that we've won. It may not seem like it right at this moment, but we won the trial. The judge ruled with us on every single point. She found the law discriminatory in its effect. She found that it was adopted by people who intended to discriminate. She found that it violated the Equal Protection Clause, and she found that it was a poll tax. And she wrote a 147-page opinion that I think is a masterpiece, and anybody out there who doesn't understand what these photo ID laws are about or just think it's as simple as why can't you have an ID to vote really ought to sit down and read her opinion. In the short run, though, the state went to the appeals court, which happens to be in New Orleans, and said, look, we don't have time to unravel the photo ID law and go back to our old law, and it'll be confusing and it'll be a mess. And we thought that was bunk, and we said so, but the Fifth Circuit disagreed with us, and then we went to the Supreme Court, and about 5:05 a.m. Saturday morning, the Supreme Court ruled that the state doesn't have to change the law for this election. And there was a long dissent by three of the judges, written by Justice Ginsburg on the court. And so at this point, I've talked to a lot of folks, and they believe that, we've lost, and that's just not true. I mean, it is true you're going to have to show an ID for this election. So when you show up tomorrow to early vote or on election day, and if you show up in person at any time to vote, you need to bring your ID. And really, that's a driver's license, a state ID, a passport, a military ID, a citizenship certificate, or a concealed handgun license. If you don't have one of those things, then you need to call Senator Ellis's office or your congressperson's office, or you can call my office, and we'll get you. We'll do our darndest to try to get you an ID or figure out how we can get you to vote this election. But in the long run, I would lay a good bet that at least this photo ID law, the way it's written, is not going to be in effect after this election. It's going to be a lot better as a result of the hard effort of Senator Ellis and others who had the courage to go and testify and were ultimately persuasive to the court. So that's sort of the status of things.
So, Chad, I think it is important to note that this is the first time that the United States Supreme Court has let a purposeful discriminatory law election change go into effect for an election. Because the trial court judge did say they knew it's discriminatory, they knew it's discriminatory. I read that article in today's New York Times, I think, that did point out that was considered a major setback and a stain on this court, on this Supreme Court, might I add.
I don't think there's any question in the long run that the Supreme Court's going to end up with a bruise in its reputation as a result of this decision. But, and what can be said about that? I mean, the reality is, and folks need to know this, especially when they go pick their U.S. senators and vote for president, the U.S. Supreme Court has 5 people on it right now who believe and have signed opinions saying that there isn't such a thing as a right to vote. There's a right to buy a firearm, 5 of them, the same 5 believe that. And there's a right to be able to give money unlimited to campaigns, because that'd be a First Amendment violation, these same 5 people think. But those same 5 people don't think there's a constitutional right to vote. And it's a sad state of affairs.
And look, I should also point out at the Fifth Circuit, I mean, it is, I guess, when at first you'll hear, a panel will hear the case, I'm assuming, or do you think that the entire court will hear the appeal on the merits of the case?
No, I think initially it'll just be a 3-judge panel. And it'll likely be a different panel than the one that heard whether the law was going to be in effect this election, the one that heard the case last week. There'll almost certainly be a different set of judges, and there'll be briefing. And, I don't think the Fifth Circuit even gets around to arguing this bill until middle of maybe the spring of next year. I think there's also a really good chance that the legislature is going to come back and try to tweak the bill itself.
And I'm assuming they will. They'll throw in some things to moderate it a bit, which will still make it a burden. It's going to make it more difficult. But they'll throw in some things, and then we'll have to make a decision on whether or not people like me vote for it, by the way, because if we want to go to court and challenge it, on one hand, I want to make it better. On the other hand, I want to win in court, because I think at the end of the day, you take the people who don't have a driver's license as an example, which is the most common form of ID. How many people do we have in Texas whose license has been suspended because of surcharges to pay for a ticket? You remember that number, Chad, offhand?
Yes, it's about 480,000.
Yeah. And I'm just guessing. I mean, clearly those are probably working class people. A disproportionate number are minorities. So those are people who have a license. That's not counting people who don't have any form of ID. And there are people. My daddy is one of them. By the way, if he didn't have Alzheimer's, thank God he wouldn't still be driving. But Chad, I appreciate the work you're doing. That Fifth Circuit, by the way, is considered the most conservative. That is known as the historic anti-civil rights circuit from when I was in law school. So most of the awful cases that ended up being overturned at the United States Supreme Court came out of that Fifth Circuit, which is the Southern Circuit.
Right. We might want to tell the callers too, Senator, that and we may need to get someone to get Reverend Manson Johnson's address, but across the street from his church, he has a facility where individuals can go in and get the proper ID. Yeah, what we call it, the EIC, Election Identification Certificate. Right. They can get that there, and they don't have to have the fear of being in a DPS or a DPS officer being there if if they have their license suspended or whatever. So we might want to get that address. Yeah, or if you call, you get that address while we're on the line. Or if you call my office, of course, and I guess people from throughout the city, I mean, we'll do as much as we can to advertise where you can go and get those identification certificates. But, Chad, thank you for the fine work that you did, and keep fighting. And the way this works, I should point out, you all did this pretty much pro bono. I mean, if you win the lawsuit, the state will fight you on paying legal fees. But so how do you all finance all of this, by the way?
Well, we raised money from various sources, and some individuals, and a lot of people who are used to giving to Democratic candidates. We also were fortunate; we got the support of Dallas County to help us pay for some of the experts. But we spent about $415,000 on just experts and deposition transcripts and travel. I mean, none of that went in any of the lawyers' pockets. That just went to pay expenses in the case, and so I would guess that I don't know how many thousands of hours I would have in the case at this point, but it's just something we do. It's a labor of love, so hopefully it'll turn out in the end. I think it will. I'll take credit for teaching you well. I should point out we're doing this call from the law offices of the Marston law firm. Steve and Amber Marston have been big supporters of a number of causes like this. On your point about Dallas County, Claude, that's kind of interesting. And Tiffany, in a Democratic county, in Dallas County, they would put some of their money up to help to repeal that law. Mm. Whereas on the other side, you got the unlimited resources of the state of Texas, taxpayers of the state paying the tab, with General Abbott leading the charge to fight this thing every step. What does the state spend, or do you have any idea? Does that have to be? Well, we know that just in terms of expenses and outside counsel, they spent $500,000. But I think the estimate, the first trial we had in Washington, D.C., I think the estimate was the state had spent something like $2.5 million. So I would guess they're easily up to 4 or 5 at this point trying to defend this law. Chad, I should point out, I mean, you were also a key lawyer on the redistricting issue as well. I mean, I mentioned both the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. But I think it's important to know in Texas, there are only 4 majority-minority states in America. There's no reason why this state ought to be considered the reddest of the red states, as far right as it is. Unlike California, Hawaii, New Mexico, the other 3 majority-minority states in America. But with us here, I mean, that is because we don't vote. Right. We got some great candidates running this go around, and we've had some good candidates in the past. And I just might point out, I was a little late getting here. Some young man was walking my neighborhood who was running for judge. I didn't think he knew who I was, so my daughter wouldn't open her door. Said my dad's in the shower, so he called. So he has a good walk list. Right. And so he was talking, and he said he wasn't. I said, well, are you for the public defender's office, young man? And he said, oh, yes, I am. Then I said, you know what managed assigned counsel is? Mm-hmm. That means that instead of the judge picking the lawyer for a poor person, you get an independent entity to do it. He said, I was at your meeting at the Democratic Party headquarters. Right. Here's the point. If we do what we ought to do in this cycle, starting tomorrow morning when you can do early voting, get it over with. From the very top of the ticket for United States Senator, Governor, Lieutenant Governor,
county judge, district attorney, offices that have so much impact on the quality of life for our folk. It'll make a difference, and that's really what this call is about today.
Just hit the D and be done.
Holman Street Baptist Church, where you can get one of those EIC cards, is 3422 Holman Street in Houston. That's in 3rd Ward.
That's correct.
Zip code 77004. Now, before we get to the end of this call, Jeremy, just take my iPad and look up some of those other addresses so we know places they can get them. Look, my staff did tell me, but I forgot I didn't read the note. I think it tells you to push, what number? 0 if you want to ask a question. We're going to go to a few in a minute. Chad, any closing comments you want to make?
Well, sure. What I would just add one other thing, because you mentioned that the redistricting cases, we expect either sometime up around Christmas or the first part of next year that we're going to get an opinion that's going to further strike down the maps that have been drawn in Texas for Congress and the State House, and that the legislature is going to have to go back to the drawing board, or the federal court's going to go back to the drawing board and draw new maps, because just as the legislature was intentionally discriminatory with their photo ID law, the courts have found that the legislature was intentionally discriminatory with their redistricting. So, slowly but surely we're chipping away. But one last thing I want to say, because people find this statement shocking, but it's true. A majority of registered voters in Texas are Democrats, right, and a large majority of eligible voting citizens in Texas are Democrats. The only majority that's Republican are the people who show up and vote. And the good news is we have the ability to affect that. All we got to do is get up and go do it.
Well, and Chad, that long opinion by the judge in Corpus Christi does make that point, and of course that's why they passed the law. I mean, and even if they come back and try and cleanse it a little bit, what they want to do is dilute the voting strength. Right. Look, I do want to ask you about this. You mentioned that in terms of redistricting, possibly we'll get another shot at creating some constitutionally consistent congressional lines and state house lines. As you know, I've encouraged you all to look at suing over my district, and I hope I'm taking a mature attitude, Claude. Senate District 13, right, that I have the honor of representing, Barbara Jordan was the first African-American to represent it since Reconstruction, and then Craig Washington, and now I'm there, and I've been here for 25 years. This district is now 90% minority. Mm-hmm. Now, in the old days, it's interesting. In the old days, I would have had to fight my party. Right. So Barbara Jordan and Craig Washington had to argue with the white Democrats, mm-hmm, because they would crack the black and Hispanic votes so that they could hold on to power. Now, this new crew, what they do is they pack us. Right. So, I remember, Chad, when I was in federal court on Wendy Davis's district out of Fort Worth, Senate District, and they asked, I guess the state said, well, why would you complain your district's 90% minority? You know what I told them, Claude? I don't want to be in there talking to myself. You know what I'm saying? That you just, if you pack these minority districts and you put all of the black folks, right, in this district that I represent, the one Royce West represents out of Dallas, that could be another seat. I maintained last go around, we'd have had a shot at winning a seat out in Fort Bend County. And what they were doing was they took all the minorities, Chad, am I right, out of that district and stuck them in mine. Then I'm honored to represent them. But I tell you what, they wouldn't have to be in my district for me to fight for their issues. But I hope you all will look at suing over these state Senate lines, too, and make all 31 of us run again for those Senate seats. We are. And, of course, we've been tied up with the photo ID matter, but that's something we're going to turn our attention to now. All right, Chad, thank you. I appreciate you.
I think we need to remind everyone that this is Senator Rodney Ellis and Claude Cummings, Vice President of the Communication Workers of America. This call is being held to talk about the first day of early voting on tomorrow and to encourage you to go out to vote. Since it appears that we're at 100% now, I'd better read this disclaimer that this call is being paid for by the Communication Workers of America, Working Voices, 501 3rd Street in Washington, D.C. No candidate paid for this particular call. Again, it's paid for by the Communication Workers of America, Working Voices, and we're glad to have you on this call tonight with Senator Rodney Ellis to talk about the importance of early voting on tomorrow, first day of early vote. Before I go, I'm also supposed to ask the polling questions related to voting, early voting, and rides to the polls. Well, you better do it for me instead of me doing it. Go ahead and do it. Don't be bashful. I'm trying to read all these notes.
I'm jumping in. So the first polling question is, do you plan to vote this year? Press 1 for yes, and 2 for no, but there better not be any 2s.
Yeah.
Well, look at those yeses come up there.
That's good. That's good. That's good. And is that another one?
Yes, we'll let that one run through.
We'll let this one run through. And now, should I wait while they're doing it? We can talk a little bit, or can I go to a question? Will I mess something up?
Yeah, wait on the.
I'll wait until we go through this polling data for folks who are on the line, who are telling us what they're going to do on this. Tell us a little bit about what TOP is doing. What are y'all doing in these neighborhoods?
So, TOP organizes on issues year-round. So we don't parachute in 6 weeks before an election day. We're talking to community members all year round around the issues that they care about, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's about how their neighborhood looks, taking care of their streets. Our statewide issue has been for the past 2 years healthcare and access to healthcare. So fight into legislature for bringing down those $100 billion to really expand healthcare for all working Texans. And so then when it comes to election time, we have an endorsement process where we ask candidates hard questions about these issues. Who's going to fight for us? Who is going to fight for these issues? And then this year we're having the largest get out the vote operation that we've had ever across the state. We're talking to 300,000 Texans. And I do want to add context. I said earlier in the call that there are over 3 million African American and Latino Texans who are registered to vote but do not vote, or maybe have voted once. So those are the voters that we are targeting this election because it's important for us all to get out to vote.
Because to win, so as an example, people who voted for Barack Obama.
Right.
In a non-presidential year, there is a drop-off.
Right.
Look, I know it.
Exactly.
That's a question we're going to get to in a second there about college students. I have 2 in my household. One's going to vote from here, and I'm going to check. I don't know how people voted, but I can check and see whether or not Mariah voted, although she's in New York.
Right.
And, I worked it out to make sure she gets her ballot and all. The other one, my older one, Nicole, she is registered to vote at her mother's house in New Jersey, and I will go check to see if they voted. Now, I'm saying that because you all have to do this as well. Our crowd just don't vote. Years ago, there was a church in Dallas that ran the names in one of the black newspapers of prominent people who did not vote. And there was some prominent people who were embarrassed.
Exactly.
So although you don't know who votes, we can do 2 things. We can see which primary somebody voted in. Unless they go sign an affidavit to block it, we can see whether you voted in the Democratic or Republican primary, not who you voted for, but which primary, and we can see whether or not you voted in an election.
Exactly.
And I want to encourage people to do that. Just let your friends know, your kids know. I'm going to check and see if you check on everything. I hope you check on everything else they say they're doing.
Exactly. So we can know that someone voted, but we don't know who you voted for, obviously. If you voted in a primary, then you can sort of know what way you lean. But one thing to say is in 2010, Rick Perry won against Bill White by 600,000 votes. So I just want to give that 600,000
votes, and then so at least we know there were another 500,000 people. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Who voted who voted straight Democratic ticket in a presidential year. So that meant that margin would have been 100,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And 3 million African American and Latino voters who don't vote generally in. Yeah.
So look, what you all are doing is amazing. Take that and take Battleground, the work they're doing, what the labor unions are doing, and what we got 2 very strong candidates, both for governor and lieutenant governor. And Claude, I want you to just walk through some of the differences between who's running for governor on the Democratic side and on the Republican side.
Well, thank you so much, Senator. And, we do have a number of CWA members that are on the call, so I want to thank you for being on the call. And, I'm sure some on the call don't realize or don't know that CWA represents more than just telephone workers. We actually represent all of the state workers in the state of Texas. And I'm certainly concerned about the state employees and what could possibly happen if we have Greg Abbott as the governor. First of all, when it comes to unions, Abbott has promoted legislation that sought to count non-participants in union elections as no votes, making it even harder to form unions and then attacking the rights of the Texas public employees, including firefighters and police officers. Now, on the other hand, Senator Davis has supported a bill that would establish penalties for employers with government contracts who misclassify employees to avoid providing insurance benefits fair wages, and more. On equal pay, Greg Abbott has opposed efforts to apply the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act to all Texans and continues to authorize notable pay discrepancies between men and women performing the same type of work. On the other hand, Senator Davis, while in the Texas Senate, was the lead sponsor of the state's version of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act to end wage discrimination against Texas workers. As far as jobs, in his efforts to lessen regulatory inspections and procedures put in place by the federal government, Abbott has allowed corporations to cut corners in the name of profit while diminishing safety standards in workplaces throughout Texas. We know that just based on the explosions that took place, in Waco. While on the other hand, while in the Senate, Senator Davis consistently voted to enact Buy Texas and Buy American legislation that would give preference to Texas and American-made products, as well as to the Texas-based contractors on public workers projects. Clearly, there's a difference between the two candidates. Also, I am positive that if we have a Greg Abbott and a Dan Patrick as the top leaders in the state, we're going to have some privatization of state employees' jobs. And we certainly do not want that at all. So we want to make sure that wages are taken care of. We want to make sure that pensions are taken care of. And we certainly want to make sure that we don't have any contracting out of jobs, because that will diminish the type of service that you are getting in your community.
There's a lot at stake, and all you have to do is vote. We're going to ask another question now. Do you need a ride to the polls? And if you need a ride to the polls, Jessica, don't let me guess, what are they supposed to push?
Push 1 for yes.
Push 1 on this phone if you need a ride to the polls. Now, as an example, to show you how hard we're working, Paul Claude Cummings' wife had a birthday party planned for him today.
That's right.
He's sitting over here with us in the conference room. But we have 768 people on this call. At some point, 7,225 people were on the call. Everybody doesn't have that speakerphone like I have. A lot of them have that phone like my sister has at my daddy's house. Well, you holding that phone.
Right.
May not have that speakerphone on there, and we've left 21,030 voice messages for people. So the way this works, if someone was not at home, I let them know that CWA was having this call with me today, and what we were talking about, and encourage them to go and vote. So we touch a lot of people. I mean, you just add that up, that's about 30,000 people. The 7,200 and 2,100, that's right at 29,000 people that we touched today, so happy birthday.
Well, thank you so very much. This is a good birthday present to be here.
And if I can jump in really quickly about Rides to the Polls, the Texas Organizing Project has an extensive Rides to the Polls program as part of our Get Out the Vote. There's lots of real and perceived barriers to vote. We talked a little bit about voter ID earlier tonight. But really it takes infrequent voters. There's lots of things that keep them from going to the polls. And we have over 1,000 people who need already rides to the polls or have asked for rides to the polls. So if anyone on the call who has a car and is interested in participating in a particular way in democracy or in this election cycle, you can call to volunteer at 888-293-8665. That's 888-293-8665. And I do notice that some folks said that yes, they do need rides to the polls, and we can. And we know who you are when you push that 1. So it's based on whatever address we're calling. If you think of someone somewhere else, you can call my office or call the Texas Organizing Project. We will give you a ride to the polls. I'm going to give that a second or two, and then I'm going to let you go and take a few questions there.
Right. We also want to remind you that if you have any problems at the poll, if you have any harassment that is taking place, you can call the NAACP. They have attorneys that are willing to address, whatever issue you might have. You can call them at 713-526-3389. Again, that telephone number is 713-526-3389. And as Senator Ellis has said, there are plenty of opportunities for you to volunteer. I know that we're going to have phone banks at the CWA Hall. I know that the Harris County Democratic Party is looking for people to get paid, and I think they're going to pay $10, an hour, if I remember correctly, for you to phone bank. So if you'll call the Harris County Democratic Party, Lane Lewis is the chair, and I'm sure that he'll be happy to put you to work.
No matter what you're comfortable, no matter where you fit in.
Where you are, regardless of where you fit in. That's right.
Okay, we've got Jessica letting someone come on and you can ask your question. I know it tells you, you're on the line and you can ask your question. We probably had you holding for so long, so if you don't see it, I see one question. Are you on that first one? I'm gonna call it out. The live one. So the brushing household, you're on the line, and your question is, in case you put that phone down, in this election, will we have to have an ID to vote? Yes. You will have to have a driver's license, a personal ID card. You can go to the next one while I'm calling these out. Election identification certificate, or of all things, a concealed handgun license. I'm glad you had me mention that. How ridiculous that is.
That's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
You can't use a student ID, but you can use a concealed handgun license. I think I offered that amendment. Did I? Did I offer that one to Wendy Davis? I can't remember. I know in federal court, one of us offered the one on letting you use your student ID, but it went down. Is that one I offered? I'm glad. Must have been a good staff told me to do that. You can have from the federal government your military identification card, citizenship certificate, or your U.S. passport. That is the law. Let's try to grab another question. Looks like you got one from Sunnyside on there. We lost you. Just keep going if you get another one there.
But mail-in ballots, I think, will mail-in ballots be counted?
Yes,
and certainly mail-in ballots will be counted. They will be counted, mail-in ballots.
You on the line? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry I talked so long.
Sir and madam, I have a question that I had never seen this before. This is a mail-in ballot. The mail-in ballot, one phrase has, if you change your vote to an opposing party candidate, your vote for the opposing party candidate will be counted as well as your vote for all the other candidates for which the party of the straight party vote was cast. I don't understand why I should be able to vote. That's two different things. I'm voting straight party, and if I should decide to vote for somebody who is not on the other side, that vote will count.
I see Jeremy Brown in here trying to pass me a note. He's such a nice, bashful Morehouse man. Man, don't pass me that note and I can't read. Can you answer it? I'm guessing, but do you know the answer, Jeremy Brown?
Yes, sir. Ma'am, if you vote straight ticket, it will count as every, that particular party. So if you vote straight Democrat, it will count every Democratic vote. However, if you decide for a judicial rate, an individual judicial rate, to vote for a Republican candidate, it would count that Republican candidate for that particular race. However, it would still count the other
Democrats.
The other Democrats.
So it will give you, so like if you wanted to vote a straight Democratic ticket and you push straight Democratic ticket, but then you decided you wanted to vote against one of those Democrats. You want to vote for one of the Republicans running for judge or something like that, well then they're going to count that Republican vote, and they're also going to count the other Democratic votes. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. But okay. The only other Democratic vote they won't count is that particular race that you decided to vote for Republican.
I guess because it's the only way they could figure out a way on a mail-in ballot to make it easy for you if you wanted to vote mainly a straight Democratic or Republican ticket for that matter. But you had one or two races where you wanted to vote for somebody else, but they didn't want you to have to go in there picking and choosing all those others. You got me? So if you vote your straight ticket, if that's what you want to do, I hope it's my ticket. But if you decide to vote your straight ticket, do that and leave it alone. You'll be doing fine. Thank you for your question. I see another call there.
Yes. Hi, Senator. I have a question. When I take my ID to go to the vote to the poll, if I have a criminal record, say I'm on probation or I owe back child support, would that stop my vote from counting?
Are you still registered?
Yes, I am.
If you're still registered, I think that's fine. Now, I'm not going to have you call. It is Jeremy. Jeremy's a practice law, but go ahead and say it.
As long as you're registered to vote, you can vote in the election.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh.
I got you. Thank you so much.
And but please vote and encourage, I should say, for all 650 folks who's still on this call, it's wonderful for you to vote. Get somebody else to vote.
Okay.
Take a family member with you.
That's right.
Okay, I will.
All right, thank you.
You know, Harold Dutton has done a good job of focusing on how people who do have a criminal record can go back and get their voting rights restored.
Right. He's doing a great job
And it's more
with that.
difficult here in Texas than in some places, and he's trying to change the law. I've carried it for him on Senate, so I can't get any movement on it. But I want to thank Representative Dutton for that, and I hope somebody will tell him I mentioned it.
I will do that.
All right. Go on up there. Don't be skipping over old Michael over there. He's about to get married. I see you skipping old Mr. Laxton up there from Sunnyside. He's not in Sunnyside anyway. You're in Third Ward now. You're getting married, young man. You're on the line, Michael. And maybe Michael's family instead of Michael. Yes, sir. That's Mr. Laxton. I thought you were your son.
Yes, it is. How you doing, Senator?
I'm doing fine.
I want to give you your props while you still alive. And that you're doing a beautiful job. And then I go into my question.
Thank you.
Yes, I always been keeping up with you, and you have not let us down yet. You have done exactly what you say you're going to do.
Thank you.
Now, what I really wanted to say is that during the time that our foreparents and way back, they died in order that we may have the opportunity to vote. So, in other words, what I'm concerned about is we are trying to get everybody out in my neighborhood to go vote, but some of them tell me, I don't want to vote because I ain't got nobody to vote for. What can I do in order that I may be able to give them the opportunity to say, hey, look, other words, the best thing in the world to do is to vote. I don't care who you vote for, but vote.
Here's what I would try, Mr. Laxton, and it might work. There are only 4 states in America that are predominantly minority. The first one of all places was Hawaii. President Obama's home state was the first minority state in America. Always was majority minority. The second one was New Mexico. It's not because of the black population. State's only about 2% African American, although they do have a black guy who is the state treasurer. The third one was California. We're living in the fourth one. Now, those other states are predictably Democratic states. Now, I'm not just saying this because I am a Democrat. You know, I always point out the Republican Party was founded on the issue of abolishing slavery. Then they went nuts. They just went the other way. You got me? Now they want to reinstitute it. But you know, look, our state would be a Democratic state. Bill White would have been governor, and Richards would have she would have won another term as governor if our crowd would vote. Now, the African American numbers are slightly higher. They're not where they ought to be, but they're slightly higher than our Hispanic numbers. We've got to get our Hispanic numbers up too.
Right.
You know, Wendy Davis she's run one heck of a campaign. I'd say she would have spent somewhere north of $30 million, about $35 million. That's a record amount. She's going to bring a lot of women back. She's bringing a lot of men back. But look, it makes a difference.
Well, let me just get in here just a minute and just say this. I don't know how they can say they don't have anyone to vote for. I mean, it's clear that Greg Abbott is trying to take away our right to vote. That in itself is enough for you to to get up and vote for Wendy Davis, because she's going to protect our right to vote. And we've got to somehow get our community, I'm talking about the African American community right now, to understand the power that they have in voting. It makes no difference whether there's a person that's making $15 million a year or an individual making $15,000 a year. That person making $15,000 a year, their vote is just as good as that person making $15 million a year. So it's equal. It's the one thing that we have in this country that's equal: the right of vote, the right to vote. That one vote counts. And we need to exercise that and understand the power that we have in our communities. Because one of the questions is, why are they trying to stop us from voting? That's why.
That's why. and look, let me tell you, Senator Davis, what a wonderful platform. I mean, she is out there publicly, not ducking it, saying that we ought to raise the minimum wage.
Right.
Led the fight with Symphonia Thompson to get that Lilly Ledbetter law passed. Women ought to get pay comparable to what men. They ought to get more.
That's correct.
Work hard. But clearly they ought not be paid less simply because they're a woman.
That's correct.
And then on the issue of expanding health care, I mean, it's just ridiculous for us to turn down $100 billion with the largest number and the largest percentage of uninsured people. Imagine a Ebola outbreak all over Texas, by the way.
Right.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Look, I'm proud of her. Unlike sometimes my friends that I've helped in the past, they're out there so worried if you run on a platform that matters to working class people, you won't get enough of the other votes.
Right.
She didn't do that. And you know what's amazing? The polling data indicates the public is ahead of us. Even people who vote in the Republican Party are not for all of that foolishness.
That's correct.
But they're voting for him. And the polling data shows it.
Right.
But so you just got to go out there and tell them, Mr. Laxton, don't give up on them. Look, you know, be polite to them, plead with them, make the case. But a lot of times it's just because people don't want to take the time to vote. Come right on in, Congresswoman. They don't want to take the time to vote, so they come up with any excuse for not voting, which is why, come right off the
And you can also tell them that if they don't vote, they're still voting. To be quite honest with you, because that's a vote, you know, that's not against the people who are trying to hurt us in our communities.
We got a great special guest that I mentioned earlier who just came in. I'm going to take one question while she's getting situated, and then I'm going to introduce her to you. Jessica, you want to grab one more? Make sure you get a cup of water or something. I know she just left an event over in Fourth Ward. I'm going to take one more question, and I'm going to introduce my friend who was kind enough to come in here today. You're on the line.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Edward Smith.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been voting all of my life because, you know, I understand what it took to get the right to vote. And now that, you know, we running and we trying to win everything, there's some Democrats that don't want to live up to what Obama has done for us. You know, they saying they scared to run under his name because they might not vote for him. But I can't figure out what he didn't do for us. You know, he's been one of the greatest presidents I've lived under.
I'm so glad, Mr. Smith, that in Texas we have not had that problem. You know, I watch those news channels as well, and one of our Senate candidates, Kentucky, I think that's the one you're referring to, she's been ducking it, and I guess the polling data over in that state may indicate that. But look, I've been real proud. I was out at churches with the young woman I'm about to introduce in a second last weekend, and I was so glad Wendy Davis, one of the first things out of her mouth was, you know, you got people who just spiteful and fighting our president just because they're still angry because he is a president.
That's right.
But, hey, and won twice. But let me tell you, I'm so glad that the president has done these robocalls in Texas. The First Lady has done calls as well. I was in Florida just yesterday, and she was there with your colleague Corrine Brown, campaigning for Charlie Crist. But look, we can do it, and our senior citizens have paved the way. If I might, I'm going to take a break here, a breather, and introduce our Congresswoman from the 18th Congressional District. Honorable Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has been going to events, been campaigning for this ticket, and I'm so glad that you are here. You've done this with me before, Congresswoman. So we touched about 29,000 households, if my math is right, today, and there are 575 people on this call waiting because I told them you were coming.
Well, let me thank you, Senator Ellis, and let me thank you to Claude Cummings and to our wonderful host who care about people. But you know what? I can jump right in and say to that very, very astute question, I can give you a whole litany of reasons why Wendy Davis, for example, will cause people to proudly jump up and say, I voted for President Obama, because the things that he has done are the things that a governor can use. For example, just after her election, we'll have Medicaid expansion, which will serve 1.4 million Texans, and it will serve some 165,000 plus in my congressional district, overlapping Senate District 13. Medicaid expansion means you can work and still have the ability to get health insurance, which you might not be able to afford in the open market. We have been violated over the years by having a governor who's refused the gift from the president. It means that our veterans will have more housing money because that's what we did when we were in the majority, more Pell Grants. more transportation dollars because we'll pass the transportation bill, and those dollars will come to the state. But let me say something else. There will be no poll tax in Texas when a new governor comes, because working with the President of the United States, we already won the idea that this was a draconian voter ID law, and the Justice Department will be willing to take this case up again because we won it in the courts. And not only that, you will finally get one vote, one person, which you have not gotten, because the redistricting has been done on a Republican watch and clock, if you will, and that has been to make sure that you don't get a chance to vote if you have Democratic leanings, if you happen to be from a diverse community, if you live in many different parts of the state, for example, where there are not offices in order for you to get a voter ID, a pictorial ID. We know you've got to bring your pictorial ID this time, tomorrow, October 20th. Make sure you come with a picture ID, but know that the people who are on the other side, that are not Wendy Davis in the Democratic ticket, who's not President Obama, has just put in a poll tax. And if I were you, I'd get to the polls as quickly as possible to get as many Democrats in across the nation. If I might just say something, I was with Mary Landrieu in Louisiana, our neighbor, and I will say to you, she is fighting hard. She has her representation of her very unique and special state, Louisiana. She fights hard for energy interests, but she stands by the values of our president and of this nation. And that's the kind of people we want to get elected. They represent their constituents, but they stand by the values of our president and this nation. And those values mean that if you're vulnerable, we're going to help you. If you are reaching for the stars, we're going to reach with you and help you. If you want to make America great, we're going to do that. And Senator Ellis, I frankly believe that Democrats have a grand opportunity not to play party politics, but to really seek people's votes on the basis of issues and their record. Their record speaks for itself. You know that I'm going to throw in almost 20 months, 2 years of economic recovery since the president came into office, creating more jobs than over a period of time of any other president, meaning in this period of time, and restoring us to a sense of economic health. And, of course, with Democrats in office, passing a Jobs Act that's going to build even more jobs. So I'm excited about this election tomorrow, October 20th. You need to run as fast as you can, because some people say, well, I'm voting in Texas. That's not going to help Mary Landrieu. Yes, it is, because when we start the wave of voting, it's going to send a message across America. And you vote, Louisiana votes. You vote, Florida votes. You vote, Colorado votes. You vote, Kentucky votes. You vote, California, New York votes. So I'm excited about where we are, and I'm excited to have been able to just to drop in. Thank you, Claude, for letting me do that. And to that very good question, I think you've made a very valid point. But remember, vote your interest.
Right. So if we got 44% of the people on the call right now that say they need a ride to the polls, so how are we going to handle those?
Oh, we got it.
You got it? Okay.
That's technology. That's because all that work, your communication work is done. We got it.
We've done our job.
You know, I want to say something about the rest of this ticket. First, you point out, Wendy Davis, this all started after that famous filibuster, after the special session. So within a record small amount of time, she's put together one heck of a campaign and raised a record amount of money. And then for Senator Vanderpute, who is Hispanic, 2 women leading the ticket is great. But look, I read today's paper, this DA's race, it's amazing. Here in Harris County, the DA's race is a tight race, and in part is because of what is on the top of the ticket, the governor's race. But look, Congressman, I just want you to comment a little bit. I mean, you and I have done a lot of work together in terms of criminal justice reforms, and, I was out working the machine at Walmart at a soccer game this morning in Atascocita. And then I started thinking, I was thinking about your ads. I was listening to those ads by Ferguson. Right. I was thinking, what if I forgot to put those on my diet, those almonds? What if I got to put one of those package of almonds on there? So I had the young sister in there. I said, look, am I doing this right? Is it weighing? I hadn't done it before. I go shopping. But none of them I get in the line. But I said, I'm going to do it myself. And I started thinking, if I get one of these wrong, and I end up at the DA's office, you got me? They're not going to get to walk out there in the parking lot. So I was joking with them, with somebody recognized us and said, Senator Ellis, I'm sure they know you wouldn't steal. You know what I did? Put my hands up in the air. Stuck my hands in there. But this DA's race, we know who's in that jail, Congresswoman. I mean, folks in there for minor amounts of marijuana, and then you get stuck in there, you get a little jackleg, court-appointed lawyer, and you sit in that county jail for about two weeks, then you decide, I'm going to plead guilty. And then the system's messed up. This DA race matters, and according to today's paper, that is a very tight race. And I just want you to comment a little bit on Kim Ogg and what a great slate we have for judges as well running as Democrats.
We have a very, very stunning state of candidates in Harris County, and the justice system is crucial to everybody, no matter what part of the county you live in. You want justice when you go downtown, and I cannot think of a more seasoned professional with a heart than Kim Ogg, 26 years of practice in the criminal justice area, heading up the Crime Stoppers and doing it effectively, dealing with juveniles, supported, and this is a big deal for DAs, getting the support and the endorsement of the Houston Bar Association. More lawyers voted for her as a competent, qualified candidate or person than the other candidate. And so I would say to you that opens doors. The judges, fairness, that's all you're asking for, not bias, but fairness. And I have seen the judges running as Democrats, and they would make each and every one of us proud. As a senior member of the House Judiciary Committee, I can assure you that what families want, the victims want to have justice, and I want them to have justice. And those who are innocent, we want them to have justice. So you need to put your lot in making sure you vote on those down-ballot candidates. I want you also to make sure, and as it relates to the statewide, that you remember Steve Brown, who will be uniquely going on to the Texas Railroad Commission out of Houston, Texas. And that would be a great asset for us, dealing with some of the issues we have here in Houston and around the state. And I just saw somebody asking about the health insurance, and I just said it. You can't afford parts of the Affordable Care Act that are under the market, private market, but I will tell you, with a Democratic ticket, you will then get Medicaid expansion, and you will be happier than you can imagine because you will be able to have health insurance. That was the intention, but it was blocked by the present Republican slate, and therefore we've never been able to get it. But the president and all of Washington, Health and Human Services, is holding a spot for Texas and Medicaid expansion. That is millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. They are holding for us to be able to accept the Medicaid expansion and be able to pay for all of you, and I think that is extremely important.
We have about 4 minutes left, Congresswoman Clark, so let's just run through those questions ourselves. So you don't have to, we'll just do it. So from the Watkins family is asking gerrymandering, question about gerrymandering, how do we get the Hispanic vote out? There's an unprecedented effort this go around.
Absolutely.
Across the state on getting that Hispanic vote out. I know Senator Garcia did a call similar to this one a few days ago, that she's going to be doing more of those.
Right.
The sheriff is going to be very active out there. So we're putting a lot of effort into our minority communities.
Yeah, we recorded some radio drops in both Spanish and English that are going to be playing on Hispanic stations, so there's quite a bit of effort.
Yeah, and our top people are knocking on doors. I mean, we're really using the Obama scorecard, by the way.
Absolutely.
I mean, the way you used to do it, just kind of, the stuff we used to do doesn't work anymore. So it is sophisticated.
And we're speaking about issues, so just very quickly, I don't think you can find one Republican that is willing to stand up and support comprehensive immigration reform and embracing voters in the Hispanic community, pushing them out to vote, wanting them to vote, and I think they're going to be getting the message.
Now, at the end of this call, I think it tells them automatically. They go into voicemail, but I'm going to walk through these. The Keys household is asking, where can I get a sample ballot? Staff, jump in and tell me. Online?
Yep.
You can get it online, or you going to call, would you call that person back?
Yes, sir.
And we'll get your email and send it to you if you can't pull it up. Look, I couldn't even figure out how to check out of the thing this morning without help. Someone else is asking, why didn't they tell us about voter ID sooner? Because they don't want you to have it. In fact, unlike other states, when they passed it, every other state in the country who passed this, they did it all for the same reasons.
Yes.
To disenfranchise people, but at least they tried to act a little nicer about it, but they didn't want you to have it. But we'll do everything we can. If you need one, I won't call your name out on this call. I see it there.
Yeah.
But even if I have to have somebody off my staff come and we'll get you to one of these 4 locations I won't call out now, where you can get this election identification card.
And we'll explain to you how you can get it. The person on the handwritten list of candidates, yes, you're allowed to take materials into the voting booth. If they're your materials, you can take the materials in. You can also take candidate cards and other,
Because it's still yours, right? Somebody gives you a card.
And you walk in with your materials, they can't give it to you at the voting, as you are voting. But as you come in, and as you have your own materials, you're allowed, that is your First Amendment right, and freedom of expression, and freedom of the right to vote. So you can move, very easily with that.
Esther, your question at the top was why a Democratic candidate supporting President Obama? Because he's been a wonderful president.
He's done a great job.
We wish he could run again. Did I skip any? Is that it?
He continues to work hard. Is there?
Right. Why would we not want to support him? That's the question. But also, there's a question about what type of... Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you telling me? Go ahead. Don't be bad. Just say it, Jessica.
The call's running it.
Oh, the call is running out. Hey, thank you all. Early voting is tomorrow.
Early vote is tomorrow.
You know where to go. Get it over with.
Stations are they?
43.
So
y'all so bashful telling us, just say it. We got these young people working. Hey, thank you all.
wait a minute, just let them know you can go to any early vote. This is not on election day, but any early vote. Where you work, where you go shopping, anywhere you can go and vote during the early vote.
And it's 2 weeks.
And if you want to help get people to the polls with the Texas Organizing Project, the number again is 888-293-8665. We need lots of volunteers. 25 a day in Harris County.
Claude, you're so wonderful. We may ask you to do another one of these calls. We may do it next Sunday. All right, thank you all. Have a great evening.
Have a great
Good to be
evening.
with you, Senator Claude. Thank you very much.
Quite welcome.